Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment of our show brought to you by Games and Things. Foosball, table tennis, dartboards, classic stand-up arcade games, pool tables, air hockey tables. I could go on and on. Home theater seating, for example, pub tables, card tables, bar stools. Great selection of just about anything you could want to make your home an entertainment center. You know, they talk about being the ultimate man cave store. If you're looking to create a family room, a game room, a movie room, this is where you start. Games and Things. Go by and see Scott and Lisa Mellon this week. All right, joining us right now, and he was kind enough, he was trying to give me cues here. He's like, hey, we're about to go on. It's like, I know what I'm doing, man. And this, the number of times I've said something bad on air, so you could barely count it on 15 hands. Ryan Callahan from GoVols247.com. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. Are you breathing a sigh of relief that the signing class is put to bed and now you can have a little respite?
You know, as everybody's discussed the past week, signing day isn't what it used to be. So
it's more about December now than
sigh
February.
of relief maybe comes December 15th or so, and then the rest of the year is pretty much all systems go all the time.
All right, very good. Well, I'll tell you what, let's just start out by looking at class rankings. And your guys do them, everybody does them. We can debate how much they really predict anything at the end of the say, but Tennessee's class rankings, now that everything's done, Rivals.com had them 12th in the nation, 4th in the SEC. ESPN, who I think only ranks the top 300 players, it's like if you have 3 top 300 players on your class and somebody else has 25 guys that rank 301 to 326, they don't. The guy with 3 signees is going to have a better class. So they have you 22nd in the nation, 10th in the SEC. 247.com does their own ranking, which is 13th and Tennessee 5th in the SEC. Their composite ranking, which combines all the other rankings out there, had Tennessee at 16th, 7th.
And some skeptics would argue because ESPN's dragging it down.
Dragging it down.
16 there. So.
There you go. Well, and since you work for 247.com, I'll take that with some serious. I'll listen to what you just said there. Ryan, we spoke several months ago, and you said, it was when Tennessee was really dragging behind. You said, look, if they get in the top 25, if they get up into the top 20, that'd be a heck of a job. Well, they finish 15th and up in a lot of these polls. In the composite, they're 16th, 17th. Are you as impressed as that would suggest, considering where you were coming from, or are there some caveats with that ranking?
I think there are 2 things, yes and no. I think for the most part, it's a very good job. And again, like you said, I was surprised that Tennessee finished that high. I didn't see that coming 6 months ago. The interesting thing about that and all the final rankings were everybody's class is a little bit smaller than it used to be. So that's one thing when you look at the numbers. Tennessee signing 21 players in a lot of cases, that wouldn't have been a top 15 class 3 or 4 years ago. But now with everyone saving room for the transfer portal, it's just interesting to note. And with Alabama, Texas A&M, and Georgia at the top kind of dominating so much, there's less quality almost in a top 15 class now. So that's one interesting thing to me is everyone's classes seem to be watered down a little bit this year because of how strong those top 3 or 4 are. So it's just worth noting there are some good players in Tennessee's class, but this doesn't look on paper to me quite as strong as what a top 13, top 12 class traditionally would look like because there are some good players, but it's not as deep maybe.
You guys do the crystal ball predictions, right? Okay, well, I'll get you to use your crystal ball here. You think that's a trend? I mean, we're at the start of this thing. Do you think that's the way it's going to be moving forward, that the top 3 or 4 classes are just going to be gold mine and everybody else is a little bit more watered down than what it used to be?
That's a concern. I mean, when you see what Alabama and Georgia are doing on a yearly basis, they're just recruiting at a different level. And now Texas A&M, however they're doing it, has decided, hey, we're going to
don't make Jimbo Fisher mad.
Yeah, so they've decided however they're going to do it, they're going to basically be up there with them at least for a year. We'll see if they can continue it, but I wouldn't bet against it. And if those 3 teams are going to do that year after year, and if Ohio State or anyone else is going to challenge them, maybe USC with Lincoln Riley, it's going to make it easier for that scenario to unfold. So I think that's at least a risk teams have to worry about. And again, one of the things I would caution people against with playoff expansion, you're just making it easier for those teams to stay at the top because they're going to make the playoff every year and be less likely to falling off 1 year or 2.
Been a lot of grumbling. I've gotten emails over this. I saw where Joe Rexrode of The Athletic did a mailbag this week, and it was like several of the questions were, why isn't Tennessee doing anything in the transfer portal? Where are the transfers? Does Josh Heupel not understand that we have to use the transfer portal? What about the transfer portal? All right, well, technically, let's go ahead and put up this list. Tennessee has 3 guys coming in that are walk-ons. They've also got Gerald Mincy, offensive tackle, coming in from Florida. That's their one good get. I think Stuart Mandel did a top 25 transfer ranking to this point. He had Tennessee 14th in the country, basically based off Gerald Mincy. So there's a lot of panic in the streets right now over the transfer portal. Gentlemen, whoever wants to take it, there are reasons that Tennessee isn't exactly grabbing guys left and right. Well, one, you're not Alabama or Georgia. If they were able to pull some of those guys, they would. They also wanted the kid from Wyoming who wound up at Texas. But there are other reasons as to why Tennessee isn't loading up. Anyone want to handle that one?
Well, it's my belief that Tennessee self-imposed some scholarship restrictions, and in doing so, you have to carry that through the calendar year. So that means through April or May. And then I think in the summer you might see Tennessee bring in some transfers. But I do think they have self-imposed scholarship limits. Now the NCAA, maybe they come out with a ruling between now and then, but I think you'll see Tennessee add some folks in the transfer portal this summer.
And I was just going to say I would add several probably by this summer. I think Tennessee has room to add, maybe by the time it's all said and done, closer to 30. So I think you're looking at maybe 5 to 8 transfers after the spring semester. That's a pretty significant haul. That's kind of what they did last year. Eight transfers who joined them after the spring semester out of 10 scholarship transfers they added.
Well, that's just it. That's what I was going to point out is there is no real, whereas you're looking at December and February for your high school sonnies, there's really no date on the transfer portal right now because you're going to have another wave of this stuff once everybody goes through spring practice and realizes, oh, I'm 3rd on the depth chart, I'm not going to start, well, I'm out of here. So you're going to have all this kickback off in a couple of months from now. Josh, your thoughts on where Tennessee stands?
Yeah, and some fans probably frustrated, thought you were getting Isaiah Nayer, this well-thought-of wide receiver who committed and then went to Texas, and then Jared Verse, who came down to Tennessee and Florida State, a defensive end who they wanted, and he chose Florida State. So I'm sure there was there was disappointment with the coaching staff, I'm sure, with those decisions as well. Alabama cleaned up with the best players, Eli Ricks and Jahmyr Gibbs going there, and Burton from Georgia. So there will be that next wave, and Tennessee will add players. Josh Heupel's fully aware of the importance of adding players to the roster, I promise.
Right, and the other thing is, I mean, you're looking at some of these guys, it kind of gets back to those top recruiting classes. There's a group that are always in the college football playoff, and that's where those guys transfer. Guy leaves Georgia, he goes to Alabama. Guy leaves Ohio State, he goes to Georgia. Guy leaves Alabama, he goes to Clemson. You're not seeing guys leave Alabama, really hot-shot recruits leave Alabama to go to Kentucky or to go to Tennessee.
Yeah, I think it offers some caution in what you expect out of the transfer portal.
Yes.
Because there are only going to be so many difference makers at positions. It doesn't mean it's not important, it is, but similar to recruiting, you're going to have the biggest difference makers, I think. And in the transfer portal, you'll have a few of those guys, but right now they're going to target Alabama, Georgia, USC, LSU. Tennessee's trying to raise its profile to get more of those guys to come in.
If you can't out-recruit Alabama and Georgia, you're more than likely not going to out-portal Alabama and Georgia, which I think people need to remember. Anything you want to wind up this segment with? Anything you want to throw out?
I was going to mention that Tennessee did have room for at least one other guy. They tried to add Marquise Robinson, an Auburn defensive line transfer. He's apparently decided to hold off and make a decision in time to enroll after the spring semester. So they've had room. That's not been the only reason they haven't added guys, but they've missed out on a few. But they have had to be selective because of those numbers. And one thing on the SEC that fans might or might not realize, this rule was added last year, but you mentioned there would be another wave of players in the transfer portal. That's true outside the SEC, but anyone that wants to transfer SEC to SEC had to enter the portal by February 1st. So if you're holding out hope that someone from Alabama still enters the portal and ends up at Tennessee, that can't happen if they want to be eligible this year at another SEC school.
So Henry To'oTo'o can't come back.
He can't.
You can't leave those brothers to come back to these brothers. Okay, very good. All right. Did the Vols get what they wanted? Did they get what they needed? We'll talk about the positions they filled in this recruiting class. We've still got a lot more to come, including a little bit more. We've mentioned the Alex Golesh situation. We'll mention that coming up as well. There's a tease. You have to wait, as if you don't have a phone in your hand. I can watch it on Twitter. Come on back. We'll talk plenty more football.